Dear family, friends, and colleagues, my name is Richard Solomon, and this is episode 22 in our series, Enhancing Human Relationships Through the Fourth R. In this particular episode, we're going to go over the functions and risks associated with the rebellious child and the little professor ego state. Now, in the previous episode, number 21, we discussed the functions and risks associated with the natural child and the adapted or compliant child. But today, I will further explain the two other ego states called rebellious child and the little professor ego state rather. So this is strange. Why would we possibly want to be rebellious? And why should we have in our repertoire of responses the possibility of having a rebellious ego state? So the answer to that question is that we need to be rebellious at some time in our lives in order to become independent, self-reliant, and show our autonomy from others. This includes declaring our independence from our peers and our friends, our teammates, our workmates, and even under certain circumstances, under our parents, our relatives, our teachers, and other authority figures, especially if they should ask us to do things that violate our norms, our beliefs, and our values. Now, it's quite developmentally normal for many adolescents to rebel against their parents and authority figures over issues such as educational goals, careers, religious choices, social choices, including how we dress, and even with whom we associate. Fortunately, the rebellious child has an internal compass that guides their behavior. And when that compass feels that it is being asked to do something wrong, the rebellious child can change miraculously and become the compliant child. So the question is, are there any good examples of people who started out as rebellious and became adaptive and compliant and even established leaders? So the two examples that we have would be Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela. Each one rebelled against discrimination in their respective countries and were willing to break the law, even go to prison, mind you, for a higher cause. Eventually, each one became civil rights leaders. Dr. King witnessed President Johnson's signing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which outlawed discrimination against race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. And of course, as you all know, Nelson Mandela fought apartheid in the Union of South Africa, and he became the first president of the Republic of South Africa in 1994. Each one rebelled against segregation, bigotry, intolerance, and hatred, and became established leaders in their respective nations. So that's why, at times, rebellious people can become establishment or adaptive figures. But why do we need the little professor ego state? And what is this little professor ego state? We need the little professor ego state in our repertoire of responses in order to think differently, creatively, to be intuitive, to generate novel and innovative solutions to the problems we encounter in life. The little professor dwells within us. It's the place where we can create original, imaginative, ingenious, uncanny, exceptional, and non-traditional ideas. Now, the little professor's thinking and behavior can also be highly manipulative and can get us to do things that we really shouldn't do under normal circumstances. Let me give you an example in my own life of how I was a victim of the little professor's ego state. Okay, so imagine now I'm with two of my friends and we're walking around the neighborhood and they came up with a fantastic idea that I had no idea about, that they had created this idea. It came from the little professors in each of them. They said, wouldn't it be a great idea if we try something novel? I said, all right, let's try it. What is it? They said, on a count of three, let's close our eyes and run across the street. I foolishly decided to comply with that crazy idea, and I ran across the street. They, of course, didn't. And I got hit by a car, but I wasn't seriously endangered. Apparently, my two friends at the time came up with this creative idea to think or to test how gullible I was as a kid. Now, I consider this a terrific example of how an original thought arising from the little professor of two peers almost took my life. Something I shall never forget, and I still remember to this day. Now, we would like to recommend that you have a discussion with your family and your friends and your colleagues about the functions and risks associated with the rebellious child and the little professor. Perhaps you can recall a time in your life when you or others behaved like a rebellious child, or that you or others behaved like a little professor. Now, in our next episode, we will be reviewing the 7 ego states of transactional analysis. And if you wish to offer comments or raise questions about this series or this particular episode, please write me an email at rdsolomonphd@gmail.com. Or you can send me a comment or a set of questions to my Facebook page, my Twitter page, or my YouTube account. So obviously, Jackie and I, who helps me with this, thank you very much for being a vital part of this series. Without you, we certainly wouldn't do this. And we want to wish you well and hope